Hi everyone, this is Michelle with Michelle's Canine Training. Today I want to talk about one of the most important tools, in my opinion, for dog training that tends to have a lot of polarized opinions. The tool that I'm referring to is the e-collar, electronic collar. Some people refer to it as the shock collar. However, I want to make the distinction between the two because I've had several clients come to me who have already purchased an e-collar, whether it's through Petco, PetSmart, Amazon. When we would test them out and see what the sensation is like in comparison to the Mini Educator or ET300 that is by e-collar Technologies. This is the company that I buy my e-collars from. This is the only e-collar I have ever used with Riley, and I love it so much. I think it's incredible. So anytime I've tried the other e-collars, they have always left somewhat of a stinging sensation afterwards, and it actually feels like a shock. However, every time I want to introduce this tool to my clients, I have them feel what the sensation is like. So the thing is, oftentimes for humans, we can't feel the stimulation until, say, above a level 10. So right now I have it in my hands and I have my fingers over the contact points. For a while now, I have been using comfort pads for Riley. They basically look like this. There's 4 contact points, and they're also more rounded as well as centrally located. Normally, when you have the e-collar, you have contact points coming out of here and here. So for her, I have always shaved both sides of her neck down wherever I decide to place it. I always switch sides every couple hours, but I do that because with a husky, especially certain huskies with very, very thick fur. My friend Shane, his dog Aegon that I have featured in videos before, he is really hard to get good contact when you use thick fur contact points. Just to completely get rid of that difficulty, I decided to shave her. That way I can just place it directly on where the skin is more exposed, and it makes it very easy. So the best way that I can personally describe the feeling from the e-collar is just that, a feeling. And the reason that I say it like that is because when you use the momentary on the e-collar, that means that the sensation is felt for a fraction of a second and then it goes away. And if you ever felt the sensation from this, it's so brief and then it vanishes immediately. There is no lingering feeling whatsoever. The reason the e-collar is extremely valuable because it allows you to communicate with your dog from a distance. And you'll learn that as you further your training with your dog, instead of needing to physically go over to your dog and grab the leash and use directional guidance through that, or even use a correction through that, you can simply use the remote. And the ability to communicate with your dog at a distance is just extremely powerful. So now with that introduction, I'm going to discuss how you end up using the e-collar in your training. So throughout all of training, when you are trying to pattern on the e-collar with your existing commands, I say that because ideally you want your dog to know the command first, and then you use this kind of like the icing on the cake. It helps to build reliability and provide even more firm understanding of what they already know. So I'm going to go through a couple examples of how this ends up being used in the early stages for the variety of commands that I teach dogs during my board and trains. When you're using this tool to teach a command in the very beginning, I personally really like using the continuous function because similar to the prong collar, the e-collar with the continuous stimulation provides a clear picture of when the command is being completed. So for example, if you are using it for a sit, all you have to do is when you say sit, at the same time you begin holding the continuous stimulation, and then the moment their butt touches the ground, you release the button. There. Sit. Good. Same with a down. You would do the same and hold the button the moment you say down. And then once all 4 of their legs are completely down, as well as their stomach touching the floor, then you would release the stimulation. Down. Good. One important point that I want to mention that you should do every single time when you are first fitting on the e-collar is to tap and find their working level. So the way you do that is immediately after you have it on, you put it at a level under 10 because that is generally the levels that a dog can feel it, the lowest level they can feel it at. So you start at a low number like a 3, and you start to tap with the momentary, which is the black button. You start tapping it, and you just watch your dog, see if they are doing anything that indicates that they feel a sensation. But make sure that when you're doing this, that it's in a calm environment, nothing much is really going on, and you also want the dog to be calm themselves. So ideally you want them to just be standing there, sitting there, laying there, just really neutral and calm. And then you tap. If you don't feel like you see any indicator, you just go up by 1 every single time until you see any sort of mention. It could be their eyes could twitch a little bit, they might turn their head a little bit, ears might twitch, just anything. And if you're unsure, do it a couple times at the same level to gauge their response. So after you found their working level, you pattern the e-collar onto existing commands in the same way for a couple of training sessions until you feel like your dog is really, really solid at understanding what you've asked them to do. So if they are consistently doing their downs, if they are consistently doing their sits, and you feel very confident that they understand what the command is and what they're being asked to do, then you can start to graduate to, instead of holding continuous, you would just tap when you say the command as a prompt. When it comes to using the e-collar for teaching heel, it is used a little bit differently because we need to use a level that is meaningful for the dog, especially when we're outside with a bunch of distractions, and there's also chances of encountering people and dogs that could trigger a dog to be reactive. So the number needs to match what the dog responds to. That's a really important part of when you begin using the e-collar. You should try to avoid focusing on what number you're at. The number you use should be what the dog is responding to. So for example, when we're teaching a heel outside, we begin with the working level. You start tapping when you're outside because their working level will be different than when they're indoors because of the change of environment, and they may require a higher working level to get their attention. We're using the same concept of pressure on and off, where we hold the button, we guide them back into the position we want them to be in, then we release the button, and we give them the opportunity to stay in the position we're asking. If they continuously push forth, go wide, if they continuously break the position, we repeat this process over and over until they get the picture that this is what is required of them and that there is no other alternative that is available to them. The thing is, if you are using the working level and they're continuously pushing forward, clearly not caring about the level you're using, you would bump your number up. So knowing what number to use will take a bit of practice and getting used to, but if your dog is constantly pushing forward and ignoring what you're requesting, then the numbers need to go higher until eventually they reach a point where they are starting to care about the sensation they're feeling and they are offering the position themselves. One of the points about the e-collar that people tend to be aversive to is the fact that it has the potential to be uncomfortable for the dog. And the thing is, in balanced training, we use positive reinforcement a lot in our training. But the thing is, we recognize that there will be moments where a dog chooses to engage in a bad behavior where a punisher or a negative reinforcement needs to be used. And I bring that up because eventually, once you have repeated and practiced your commands with your dog numerous times, I'm talking hundreds to thousands of times of repetitions in all sorts of environments and all sorts of exposures, then you should move on to the correction phase. The thing is, if you don't move on to the correction phase, then you aren't holding your dog accountable for something that they know. And if you aren't, they will more likely break command and they won't be as reliable because they know that there isn't a consequence for them not following through with something that they understand. So in that case, once we start reaching the correction phase, we're no longer using the e-collar for prompting. You would simply give a command just using voice. You give them an opportunity to follow through with what you've asked. And if they don't do it, then you're going to have to correct them at a higher level than they're used to, or a level that is meaningful to them, to let them know that that is unacceptable and that you disagree with that. For a command like recall, that is especially important because recall is something we want to teach your dog to be extremely reliable. So especially for recall, once you have proofed the command over and over and done the reps, then it is extremely important that you apply the correction stage for when they blow off your recall. Reliability in dog training only comes if you enforce the command that you're asking for every single time. And if you eventually want to have an off-leash lifestyle with your dog, then e-collar would be the only way to achieve that. The e-collar is something that enhances your training to the next level, and I would say it is an incredible investment for the growth of you and your dog. If you're on the fence about this tool, I implore you to look into videos of people using this tool for training and come up with your own opinion. There are many people out there who are trying to put down this tool because they do not understand how it is being used. And I always want owners out there to have the best tools available to enhance the relationship with their dog. If you have any questions on the tool or how to use it, please leave me a comment or please reach out and contact me. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like the video, please like it or subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.